Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Pruning the limes that are pleached around the vegetable garden is a very symbolic action here at Longmeadow because it feels like spring it can't really begin until all osseous growth is cut away, we're left with the bare bones, and then the new growth can come in and follow it. And over the years it's a job I've learnt to love because it's so symbolic. Now, I'm not going to be up here just pruning limes. I'm going to be showing you part of Longmeadow that you haven't seen before, and yet it's probably one of the most important bits of the lot to us as a family. And I'll be repairing the lawn in there, I'll be sowing some hardy annuals, and also pruning my figs. Carol will be visiting the Gibberd Garden in Essex.
There's no route around this garden. It's all done with a clever placing of objects and sculptures.
And Joe is dealing with a problem that seems to have affected a lot of gardeners over the last hard winter.
Did it have orangey sort of?
Yes, it was running down the trunk.
Oozy, yeah. Orangey, yellow.
It looked as if it was foaming as well.
Foaming?
Yes.
This is the walled garden. And it was the first piece of garden that we made when we came here 20 years ago. In fact, it's always been our domestic space. There's been a paddling pool in here and trampoline, and this is where we eat in the summer. And it comes into its own round about mid-May and is really nice from then through to mid-September, I suppose. And we planted lots of roses. Everything here is soft. Pinks, mauves, lilacs, yellows. It's a gentle, very, very relaxed place. And today I want to sow some hardy annuals, which will add to that floral mix. Now, annuals are brilliant at filling the ground and adding colour and texture, just as well as perennials, although for a shorter term. Now, if I just broadcast them, they would grow. And they would grow fine, but they would also get completely mingled up with the weeds. So I need some way of knowing exactly where I've put my precious seeds. And the simple way to do that is just rake over a piece of ground and make a pattern of some kind. It doesn't matter what. If I draw a cross like that, and then sow my seeds in that cross, as they grow, I'll be able to see very clearly a cross of little seedlings in amongst any weeds that grow. So I weed everything but that cross. Then I thin them, and as they grow up, believe you me, you lose the pattern. And it doesn't matter if it's a cross, a circle, a square, a zigzag, any old shape you like, just something you can recognize. Now, my choice of seeds is dictated by the color theme in this part of the garden, which is soft. So I'm going to put some cornflowers in here, and these will have a lightish blue. We don't want any harsh, intense colours. We've got the jewel garden for that. And I just put them in thinly. It's much better to have fewer healthy plants, not competing too much for nutrients or water, than lots and lots that are struggling to survive. You'll get just as many flowers as a result. And I will have to thin these slightly as they grow. So I'll probably end up only with 4 or 5 plants in this spot. And then just cover up the rills gently with my fingers like that. And now mark it, which is why I'm clutching these prunings. These are lime prunings, and you can see that lovely red. Right, that's one little patch, and I'll do this all over the wall garden, filling the gaps. Hardy annuals tend to come from the northern hemisphere, which means that they respond to light just as much as they do to heat. So by sowing them now, as the days are getting longer, they're giving them the maximum opportunity to grow really fast, set flower, ideally round about the longest day or before, and then that gives the seeds time to ripen and fall as the days get shorter. By adding hardy annuals to this piece of garden, I'm building up a tapestry of colour. And sometimes a scent with it, and sometimes it's individual flowers work, but overall it's a sensual, floral experience, and I love that. But Carol has been to the Gibberd Garden in Essex, which has been created through a love of sculpture, architecture, and dramatic design.
The Gibberd Garden in Harlow, Essex. is considered to be one of the most important post-war gardens in the whole of Great Britain. It was designed in the late 1950s by the famous architect Sir Frederick Gibberd. He was also responsible for such iconic projects as the Catholic Cathedral in Liverpool and the design and development of the new town of Harlow. Gibberd created his own private fantasy with a number of garden rooms that tempt you in different directions, using sculpture and landscape design. He had a clear vision of what he wanted his garden to become.
It really begins as garden design in the core, and then it extends into landscape design out into its surroundings. So it really expands from architecture, which is the house, into garden and then into landscape.
Sometimes Sir Frederick modified his house, building these enormous windows to frame views that already existed outside and enabled you to see them from the house. And always there was this wonderful organic relationship between the inside and the outside. There's no route around this garden. Sir Frederick was a past master at luring you in, enticing you this way and that. It's all done with a clever placing of objects and sculptures, the way a gap is created between a hedge, or the way a tree is pruned. And it's something that everybody can think about and aspire to in their own gardens.
Garden design, in its simplest form, is the art of picture making. And I think my best example is the view of a Roman temple. If you stand at X and you look, there it is, a perfect frame picture.
Sir Frederick loved this nut walk, 3 parallel lines of coppiced hazels, but he felt that it needed at its end some focal point, and he wanted a white sculpture. He couldn't find anything, so in the end he had this lovely lady commissioned. She looks perfect at the end of there, and it's typical of his desire to integrate sculptures and artefacts within the garden that he was designing. Gibberd believed that once you look at a garden as design and put it into practice, it becomes an art form.
You are concerned with, first of all, an art of space. Then you're concerned with form, colour and texture. And it's all complicated because it changes over the season and it changes over the years. And I think it's probably the most complex art and the most difficult art that I certainly have ever worked in.
Long ago in my youth, I was trained as a painter. And it's true that I tend to see everything in terms of 2 dimensions. I think about my garden and it's like a flat plan. But one thing I'm really going to take home from this garden is this wonderful use of space, of volume, of vertical structures. I'm going to go home with all sorts of new ideas. If you're planning a garden visit this weekend, the Gibberd Garden has just opened its gates for the new season. But if you can't get to Essex, there's Little Sparta in Lanarkshire, the Barbara Hepworth Sculpture Garden in St Ives, and the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, Wakefield. all are stunning and well worth a visit. For even more suggestions, go to our website.
I do so agree with Carol about the importance of height in a garden. And when we came here to Longmeadow, it was completely flat. Nothing really taller than the grass that grew. So I've tried to get as much height as possible. And you can do that in quite a small space. I mean, this walk is very narrow, but it's clipped back now, but it will grow another 2 or 3 feet. And I've tried to get the hornbeam hedges as high as I can manage them. And what you get, if it works, is the same effect you get in a church or a cathedral. You have this great tall aisles going through the garden, which even in a little garden seems to expand the space. The primroses are coming to an end in the coppice, but they're replaced by another flower I absolutely love. This is the wood anemone. And you can see the outside of the plant is flushed with a sort of mauvey pink streak. But the inside, when they open, which they will do in the sunshine, is almost pure white with this delicate, almost citron yellow interior. And although each individual plant seems almost fragile, the massed effect can be really dramatic. And they've spread obligingly from the dozen or so that we originally planted. And just for a few weeks now in April, they are the heroes in this part of the garden. The lawn here in the middle of the walled garden is no great shakes, I'm very aware of that. And I don't worry too much about grass. If it's green, it's clean and it's soft, then I'm happy. But there is a divot here in the middle. We had a cherry tree here, Tai Haiku, and it only stayed here for about a year. It didn't really work. We've moved it to another part of the garden. Turfed over, but because it was dug for the tree, it's dropped. And you can see if I put this board over it, there's quite a gap underneath there. But to repair that, I've actually decided to replace the turf. And because my turf won't match, I'm going to make a feature of it and have a square of different turf in the middle. So the first job is to mark out the area and remove the turf. If you're removing turf, the best way to do it is in sections that can be handled so that you can reuse it. Cut strips or squares with a turf cutter or sharp spade. Carefully sliding the blade underneath it and then lift the sections one by one. Pile them up carefully and make a turf stack. And a turf stack is when you stack the turf grass face to grass face and build it up and leave it, and then you slice down through it, and that gives you beautiful loam, which is great either as part of potting compost or if you want to use it to fill in a bit of soil here and there. Either way, it's very useful. After lifting the turf, I prepare the soil by forking it over. Then I bulk up the ground by adding sieved soil, compost and sharp sand. Because if you want a healthy lawn, you must have good drainage. The next phase is to tread it all over. And you always do this whether you're sowing or turfing any soil. Just tread it over like this, firming it, but not compacting it. Now, I'm going to turf this, but of course I could do it with seed. And a packet of grass seed like that costs about £3 or £4. And this turf costs £3 a roll. Obviously, a packet of grass seed will do much bigger area than the surface of the roll, but it takes longer, and also it's harder to get exactly the type of surface you want. For a larger area, I'd go for grass seed. It gives, in the long term, a better result, but for patching, I think it's turf every time. And it doesn't matter if you're doing an area this size or a football pitch, exactly the same procedure, which is to lay your rolls out, having kept them damp, and butt them tight to the edge, because you can always cut the edges to fit, and unroll it, and lay them in courses. So make sure that the joins, which are here, don't meet. And the other thing is, I've got a gap there. You never put your short sections at the edge. So what we'll have to do is cut that and put a short section in the middle. Because before turf bonds, it dries out unless you're very careful. And the edges curl like a stale sandwich. So the smaller the piece, the more the edges are likely to curl. So we want to keep that join there nice and big. Now, don't need to worry too much about it knitting at this stage, because obviously it has to grow to do that. Just want to make sure it's level. If remember, I put the board across and there was a great big dip. Well, it's not there now. Although it looks like finished grass, we should treat this like seed and not walk on it for at least 2 weeks. And a good rule of thumb is when it's growing strongly, and keep it watered. These figs have been here now for 16 years. I put them in actually the day before my 40th birthday. I remember I went and bought them and popped them in. And they've become a feature of the wall garden, and we love them. We love them mainly for their trunks, which look like elephants' legs. And I prune them clear so we can enjoy just these as structural features, and also the shade they give in summer. However, they've been hit really hard by the last 2 winters. And if you look here, for example, you can see that you've got absolutely dead growth. If I snap that off, it just breaks. However, the fig itself will be fine. I know that. I've just got to prune it and tidy it up. Now, of course, figs aren't native, and they've learnt to adapt to our climate, and it's not a wonder that they have a hard time of it, but not nearly as bad, it seems, as cordylines have had over the last couple of years. I've had loads of letters. The programme has had masses of letters coming in. What on earth is happening to our cordylines, and what can we do about this problem? Joe has been along to Walsall to have a look at a particularly damaged cordyline and offer some advice.
Last year, Maureen's garden was at the height of its beauty, with stunning cordylines and other exotics creating a wonderful display. It's a garden that she's nurtured for the past 18 years, and the structure and form of the architectural plants are key to the impact the garden has on all the senses. A year on, and after the coldest December on record, the garden has suffered badly. I've had a long chat with Maureen before coming to visit her, and I suspect that the damage is not solely down to the cold weather. Oh, so this is the cordyline you were telling me about?
This is the cordyline, yeah.
Oh, you must be quite upset.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful, yeah.
It's looking quite damaged now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And it's got a funny smell as well, and I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, it's major damage on it, isn't it? You can see
yeah.
how hard it's been hit by well, the coldest December on record,
Yeah.
plus last winter was
That
cold
was bad
too,
as
so it's had
well,
a
yeah.
double hit. But actually I think the problem with this cordyline goes deeper than this. There's this bacterial infection called slime flux. In fact, the RHS have had lots of letters and lots of people inquiring about it, and so have we. Cordylines right across the board have been damaged severely, and I think this has got classic symptoms of it, really. Now, this slime flux is actually soil-borne bacteria, and through the winter the bark will crack, and it allows this stuff called slime flux to get in there.
Yeah.
Did it have orangey sort
Yes, it was running down the trunk.
of oozy, orangey, yellow?
It looked as if it was foaming as well.
Foaming. Exactly. And now you can see it's really damaged the trunk, and it's left this sort of black residue around the base, which slightly smells as well.
does
It's
smell,
sort of got
yeah.
a slightly fishy smell, which, you know, is never a good sign of a plant, really. And
I've never heard of that before.
No,
so.
well, you get it in trees, and actually you can get it in clematis as well.
Yeah.
But this year it seems to have jumped onto cordylines.
Will that infection spread to the rest of the plants that I've got planted round it, Joe?
Most of these plants will be absolutely fine with
Yeah.
it. Most healthy plants can ward off most infections.
Yeah.
So it's because this has been hit by the frost that it's become susceptible to it.
Yeah.
The good thing about cordylines is that they will generate from the base.
Yeah.
It's called epicormic growth. It comes from the base and they start all over again.
All right.
Which is great. So what it means is we've got to take this down to quite low, almost at ground level, take all this structural damage out, and hope that it regenerates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, then that'll be fine.
You up for that?
Yeah, I am. You're going in.
I'm going in. Take one of these. Got it?
That's it.
It's heavy, that bit, isn't it? Because it's full of water. It's amazingly fibrous and wet still. Well done. But you can see here it's a nice clean cut now, and that's quite important, that you don't end up with sort of lots of bits sticking out. It's a nice single clean cut through it.
Can we treat that now, or do you just leave it as it is?
Just leave it as it is. It doesn't need treating with anything at all.
No. And just protect it in the winter if I have any new growth.
The new growth, it's important that you protect it because it'll be young and it'll be tender.
Yeah.
And if we have another sort of severe winter,
Yeah,
it's just gonna repeat. So
Okay.
the idea is to really try and establish some woody growth
Yeah.
that can get through a winter.
Yeah.
But it'll probably split. Rather than having a single trunk, you'll
Yeah,
probably have
up
two
to
or three,
three.
which can look fantastic.
Yeah.
Actually, I prefer
Yeah.
cordylines
Yeah.
when they split a bit.
Yeah, that'll be good.
And actually, the old timber, what I would do is I'd put it in the green bin for your council to take
Yeah.
away, because they compost at a much higher temperature than you do at home. And what they'll do is they'll chip it and then they'll compost it, and it's
Yeah.
so hot that they sterilise it all the way
right,
through.
okay, yeah.
Whereas at home, you're not going to reach those temperatures,
No.
and you're going to run the risk of reintroducing,
Yeah,
slime
the
flux back into the garden.
Okay,
so
yeah.
you're better off getting it out.
Yeah, okay.
Once you've had to remove a large architectural plant from your garden, what can you do to fill the space that's left behind? Well, I've come up with a very simple design solution that will fill the gap whilst the cordyline regrows. I was wondering, this black willow obelisk, something like that. Because obviously it's a temporary solution, so it just needs to be there for a year until the cordyline comes back. And you could grow some annual climbers up it for a shot of
that
colour.
looks nice, yeah.
You know, there's lots of great climbers that you could use.
I could use Morning Glory because it's a nice bluey purple and it would go with the Philadelphus.
That'd be lovely, yeah, set off by the Philadelphus and
Yeah.
the bamboo behind. And it just sort of take your mind off the cordyline not being there for a while. And once the cordyline grows up,
Yeah,
you
you
can
can move.
take this and you can use it somewhere else
Yeah.
in the border and use it with annual
Yeah,
climbers
that's a
every
good
year.
idea, yeah. It's just a big shock when you lose a big plant, isn't it?
I know. I'm
You've
trying
had
to
it-
take your mind off it.
I know, you've had it from when it was that big and then...
Oh, it's going to come back.
There must be such a lot of disappointed people who've done this, lost the same things.
No, exactly. But you've had many good years out of it.
Oh, we have, yeah.
And it's coming back.
Yes, it is.
I don't grow cordylines, but I'd be devastated if this fig was to die. But it's good news that it will grow back, and personally I like cordylines with multi-stems. And thank you for writing into us. If you've got any problems, any dilemmas that you think that Joe or Rachel could help out with, please do write to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you go to our website, you'll get all the details. Now, this fig, as I say, I'm pruning for its aesthetic qualities. And it's a question of not just cutting off the dead material, I'm pruning this fig to make the most of its structure and form. However, I do love the fruits and want as many as possible. And to maximise fruit production, you need to prune it in a slightly different way. And I've got one around the corner that is a good example of that. This little fig is planted against what is a southwest facing wall. It's only been in here for a couple of years and it's not very well pruned, but the idea is to let it grow against this wall and not get any bigger than the space of the stone around it. And if you want fruit from a fig, there are two things that you have to consider. One is to restrict its root growth, so it puts its energy into fruit, and the other is to prune it appropriately. Now, as far as the root growth goes, you've got the wall on one side stopping it go that way, and you've got very stony, thin soil here. So this is a good position and lots of sun. As far as pruning goes, we're trying to create short, rather knobbly sections rather than long, whippy growth. I'm going to start by removing the suckers at the base of the plant because they will be very vigorous but be sapping energy from the plant. So we'll take all these off, and that will need redoing every year. As we come up, we'll take that off because it's going against the wall. I take this branch off because it's growing outwards and I want to keep everything as flat as possible. And these are crossing, and eventually they're going to rub, and that's no good. So some of these are going to have to go. Now, there's no system to this. I'm making this up as I go along. I'm using common sense. What I'm thinking is I want a two-dimensional plant that is fundamentally growing laterally and not out into that direction. So what I have now is just the basis of a fan train fig, nothing too formal, and that should bear plenty of fruit, especially when I tie it in and let lots of light and sun get to it and bake those figs and get them ripe, which won't be until September at the earliest. These are the beetroot that I sowed 4 weeks ago. They've germinated, they've come through, but they need to be hardened off before I can plant them out. They've gone from the hot bench, they're now in this cool part of the greenhouse. Next stage is to take them out to the cold frame. Now, there are lots of other things to be doing this weekend, and here are some ideas that you could be doing at home. If you're raising plants from seeds, it's important to prick them out as soon as they develop true leaves. Hold them by a leaf and ease them gently from the soil, taking as much root as possible, and you'll be surprised at how much root there is. Put them in a new, slightly larger container, gently pressing the soil around them, and then water them in well, which will also help to consolidate the soil around their roots. Recutting lawn edges in early spring stops the grass spreading into beds and borders, and redefines the lawn. Use a plank as a straight edge and make cuts cleanly using a half-moon edging tool or a sharp spade. The beetroot go into here, where it's open during the day but closed up at night so that they get some protection, and then from here they'll go and stand outside day and night in this slightly protected space, so by the time they're ready to go outside they're hardened off, they're robust, and they can take whatever the weather throws at them. At this time of year, that rhythm of seeds and seedlings and hardening off and planting out just rolls along, and I love that. And that's pretty much what I'll be doing this weekend. But I'll see you again next Friday here at Longmeadow. Till then, bye-bye.